if I look at something like this guy, it says a recipe calls for 3 cups of rolled oats, 1 cup of brown sugar, 2 cups of milk, 1 tablespoon of cinnamon, 2 eggs, 1 tablespoon of vanilla extract, and it should serve about 6 people. Okay, and this is a recipe for baked oatmeal. If you want the rest of that recipe, you can let me know. But anyway, what would doubling the recipe look like? And so the idea here is, sometimes the ratios are simple enough that we don't want to set up proportions. We want to do these things in terms of fractions instead. Okay, and so like for this one, I could say something like this. I could say, well, if I want to double it, I'll just multiply all of those ingredients by 2. All right, and really, it's like setting up the ratio. Like, think about doubling the number of people. Well, then it would be 12 people that I wanted to serve. So the ratio is 6 to 12. So then as I take each piece of this recipe, I say, 3 cups becomes how many cups to serve 12 people? And I cross-multiply and solve and all that stuff, but that's a pain. It's a lot easier to say if I want to double the recipe, the ratio here is 2 to 1, so I just multiply by 2 over 1, okay? Or you might say the ratio is 1 to 2, but you still multiply by 2 over 1, because remember, we could rewrite the ratios different ways, so it becomes multiplication. So here's what we're going to do. For this one, I'm just going to say, hey, to modify this recipe, I'm just going to multiply everything by the 2 over 1, okay, by that kind of ratio that I came up with. And if I multiply everything by 2 over 1, I don't know if I wrote enough of them, my new recipe becomes this. It becomes 6 cups of rolled oats. It becomes 2 cups of brown sugar. Becomes, where am I? I lost my train of thought here. 4 cups of milk. It becomes 2 tablespoons of cinnamon, 4 eggs, 2 teaspoons vanilla extract, and it should serve now 12 people. Okay? But it's the idea of just taking the ratio and multiplying. And here's the thing, if I wanted a larger ratio, I better multiply by something that's going to give me larger values. If I want a smaller ratio, I'm going to multiply by something that gives me smaller values, by a fraction. Okay? Along those same lines, what if you wanted to make this for 3 people? And so the idea here is I went from 6 people, and I want to change this to 3 people. In other words, I want to cut the recipe in half. I want to change this to 3 people. And so as I think about that, that means I would have to multiply the recipe. I want to cut it in half, so I'm going to multiply by 1/2. So it's the same thing we did before. It's the same ratio, but we want to go to the smaller value this time. So I'm going to multiply each of these things by 1/2. And I'm not going to write that over and over again, but multiply all this stuff by 1/2, the new recipe translates into, 1.5 cups of rolled oats and 1/2 cup of brown sugar. Oops. Guess I'm just going to do the units this time. 1 cup of milk, 1/2 tablespoon of cinnamon, 1 egg, and 1/2 teaspoon of vanilla extract, okay? But the idea here is just multiplying instead of setting up a proportion for each of these things, okay?